Well, hey guys, in today's video, we're going to talk all about the best retinol for beginners. This is a topic that has been on my mind for some time. I get so many questions here in the comments on my YouTube videos, especially from new people, also over on my Instagram comments and on my TikToks. Hey, I'm thinking of starting retinol. What's a good one to start with? What's a good retinol for beginners? What's a good retinol that, may be appropriate for me? I'm really afraid of it. I want to go slow. I hear these types of comments all the time. Here's the thing about retinol. There is no such thing as a retinol for beginners. I know, shocker, right? And I'm telling you that because A, it's the truth, and B, I see a lot of marketing around retinols, and a lot of times they will lead you down this path of believing that there is a good retinol to get started with, and then later on you graduate to another one, and it's kind of this odd way of, well, selling you a bunch of different products. So bear in mind, there is no such thing as a retinol for beginners. Why? Well, retinol is a cosmetic ingredient, and retinol is retinol. And it doesn't matter if it's the first time you're putting it on your face or you've been using it for 30 years. It's a cosmetic ingredient. It's a cosmetic ingredient, it's a form of vitamin A. And why might you want to use retinol? People want to use retinol, a cosmetic ingredient, not a drug, a cosmetic ingredient. People want to use retinol to improve the signs of skin aging. There is some evidence that cosmetic retinol may help in improving things like age spots, wrinkles, improving skin texture, roughness that comes about as a result of cumulative sun damage and just the aging process to the skin. There's nothing specific about one brand's retinol versus another brand's retinol, or one retinol in a brand's product portfolio versus any other in their product portfolio that necessarily makes it any more appropriate for a first-timer versus a more seasoned retinol user. There are several retinol products on the market that I happen to think are very good, and I recommend whenever anyone asks me what's a good retinol, period. It doesn't matter if it's the first time you're using them or if you've been using them for a long time. I recommend the same retinol products pretty much to everyone. Keep watching this video because we're going to go through a handful of other really common retinol for beginner myths that I hear perpetuated all the time. And the hope is that if you watch this video till the end, by the time you leave this video, you're not going to fall for a lot of marketing myths around retinol that maybe lead you to either be confused or just spend a bunch of money. I keep emphasizing that retinol is a cosmetic ingredient. This is in contrast to the prescription form of topical vitamin A, tretinoin. Tretinoin is a form of vitamin A. It's a retinoic acid. You put it on your skin and it can help improve collagen production with long-term consistent use. It can help fade sunspots, age spots. It can improve skin texture, roughness, smooth out fine lines, but you need a prescription for it, and it can have a lot of side effects, especially in the first few weeks, namely of dryness, peeling, and irritation. Maybe you've tried it in the past and you didn't care for the dryness and peeling. Maybe you were never able to tolerate it, and you've heard retinol is a gentler alternative. You would not be mistaken. Retinol is a lot less irritating in comparison to tretinoin. Why might that be? Well, first of all, retinol as a cosmetic ingredient, it's not active. Your skin has to do some work on it and convert it to the active form. That takes a little bit of time and effort on the part of your skin, and because of this, you end up with less irritation but a slower onset of action. But because retinol is a cosmetic ingredient, in contrast to tretinoin, which is a prescription medication, manufacturers who make retinol products, they don't have to go through the same hurdles of demonstrating efficacy like tretinoin has. When it comes to retinol as an ingredient in a cosmetic, it boils down to the formulation overall, and there's nothing that's going to be able to predict whether any given retinol product is superior to any other, let alone if it's going to be somehow gentler than any other retinol product on the market. There's really nothing about an ingredient list that predicts that. No one can predict that. You see, we don't have comparator trials where you take one brand's retinol versus another and you have people use them, you evaluate them in a blinded fashion and see which one performs the best. Do they perform the same as one with less? You just don't get that kind of information. Anyone who says this is the best retinol for beginners, they're making that up because there isn't any data to show that a given product is the best one. That might merely be their opinion, perhaps based on their personal experience using it or their experience recommending it. Maybe some of the other ingredients they find help support the skin barrier, but it's not to say that that retinol retinol is somehow no longer appropriate for somebody who has been using it for a long period of time, or that, it's the go-to if you are starting out. The other myth that I hear perpetuated a fair amount is that cosmetic retinol is weaker than cosmetic retinaldehyde. And I know what you're thinking, what? I didn't even know what retinaldehyde was. What is she talking about? That's okay, I'll explain really quickly. So retinol and retinaldehyde, these are both cosmetic ingredients. These are both forms of vitamin A that when applied to the skin eventually can help improve the look of skin aging. Neither is in its active form when you put it on the skin. Retinol, your skin has to do 2 steps in order to get it to an active form, whereas retinaldehyde, your skin only has to do 1 thing to it. And so most people just assume that that means that retinaldehyde is more potent, is stronger, is more effective, will get you results faster in comparison to retinol, both of which, by the way, you can buy over the counter without a prescription. These are not medications, they're cosmetics. So a lot of people may be under the impression that retinaldehyde, because it's stronger, it's not appropriate for a beginner, or retinaldehyde is something that you graduate to when you want something that is stronger or more potent. This line of reasoning, though, actually hasn't been proven in clinical studies. There aren't any clinical studies that really robustly compare in a blinded fashion the outcomes and the onset of outcomes in people using retinol versus people using retinaldehyde, let alone comparisons between different brands. Just as with retinol, with retinaldehyde, efficacy is largely influenced by formulation overall. And I'm pointing this out because I see a lot of people marketing their retinaldehyde products as the most potent topical vitamin A that you could buy without a prescription. And that is absolutely not entirely correct, because who's to say that that's true? You could have a really good retinol cream. You could be seeing results with it, getting somewhere with it, using it consistently, eventually seeing improvement in things like age spots, smoothing out of fine lines. And you may be misled by this advertisement telling you that retinaldehyde is a purer, stronger form. And you may think in your mind, oh, I'm getting results with retinol, time to upgrade, time to upgrade. You could take several steps back, because the retinaldehyde product may not be any good. The retinaldehyde product may be formulated poorly. The retinaldehyde may not be stable in the formula. And so you may be swapping out something that you have good results with for something that isn't going to work out for you. So brands that mislead you into thinking that switching over to retinaldehyde is like upgrading, getting a more potent result, that's misleading. It is true that retinaldehyde, your skin only has to do 1 thing in order for it to be in its active form, whereas with retinol, your skin has to do 2 things to it. So it's logical to predict that you might see results with retinaldehyde faster in comparison to retinol. But there's no guarantee that that's going to be the case, because with both ingredients, it boils down to the formulation overall. The other false assumption here is that retinaldehyde, because it's stronger, it might be more irritating in comparison to retinol. And that's not true either. Both retinol and retinaldehyde are pretty stinking gentle. They don't typically come with those side effects that the prescription Tretinoin does of really robust peeling, irritation, dryness. Sure, you can have some of that with the cosmetic ingredients. Tretinoin, on the other hand, because it is in the active form, retinoic acid, it hits a bunch of receptors once you put it on the skin, and that is really what can lead to a lot of irritation in the beginning. With the over-the-counter cosmetic ingredients, retinol or retinaldehyde, the likelihood of side effects, honestly, is pretty much the same between both ingredients. Just because retinaldehyde, your skin only has to do 1 thing to it, it's not going to be more irritating. They're roughly about the same, and by and large, both ingredients are much less irritating in comparison to prescription Tretinoin. Again, the extent of irritation, a lot of it will also be dictated by the formulation overall. Some retinols and some retinaldehydes, they're in formulations that have other ingredients in them that support the skin barrier, but by and large, retinol and retinaldehyde, They're really, really, really gentle. And I wouldn't assume that retinaldehyde is harsher, stronger, going to be less ideal if you have very sensitive skin. I'm pointing these things out because I do think that for a lot of consumers, they have been misled by advertising to believe that they're going to start with retinol and then graduate to retinaldehyde and then graduate to a prescription strength product. When we're talking about improving the signs of skin aging, that may not be necessary. It may be just going about a process that you end up buying a bunch of products, some of which may be effective, others are not. Because again, with cosmetics, there's a huge unknown. There aren't actual studies on all of these different products demonstrating efficacy. Speaking of sensitive skin, here's another really common myth that I hear perpetuated over and over again about retinol and or retinaldehyde. And that is, you shouldn't use these ingredients if you have eczema. Listen, if you have eczema, otherwise known as atopic dermatitis, you have to be careful introducing any new ingredient or product into your routine, because any ingredient, any product has the potential to aggravate atopic dermatitis. In the case of retinol or retinaldehyde, if the product, the formulation ends up causing some irritation for you in the beginning, that can precipitate a flare of the atopic dermatitis for some people. Atopic dermatitis, everyone has different triggers. This is going to vary a lot from person to person. I suggest if you have atopic dermatitis, otherwise known as eczema, and you want to introduce retinol or retinaldehyde, bear in mind that both have the potential to aggravate your eczema, and it's going to be more likely that they do so in the first few weeks of starting it. Try just using a couple of nights a week for the first few weeks, and then slowly, gradually increase to using nightly as tolerated. That slower onset of frequency of use can help mitigate the dryness and peeling. But again, by and large, cosmetic retinol and retinaldehyde, these are generally pretty well tolerated. We're not talking about the peeling and irritation that commonly happens with tretinoin. You don't really get that at least to the same extent. If you have atopic dermatitis, retinol may offer you improvement in the long run, because these ingredients with long-term consistent use potentially can improve epidermal barrier function, which for people who have atopic dermatitis, that's the underlying issue, or one of the underlying issues with their skin condition, is a problem with the skin barrier. And a caution around use of retinol or retinaldehyde or prescription retinoids is that irritation in the beginning equals impairment in the skin barrier, that side effect of irritation. But once you can overcome that through continued use, then once the actual ingredient takes effect, you have the potential for improved barrier function. And that ultimately could potentially help your facial eczema. Now, certainly cosmetic retinol and cosmetic retinaldehyde, these are not treatments for eczema whatsoever. They're just cosmetic ingredients. But don't assume that they're going to necessarily be bad for you if you do have eczema. Topical retinoids end up being really helpful in the treatment of hand eczema, the prescription retinoids, not the stuff you buy over the counter, but the prescription retinoids can in many cases be very helpful for hand eczema because they improve barrier function. Similar to the atopic dermatitis myth, another one that I hear is that you can't use retinol or retinaldehyde if you have rosacea. Now, rosacea is a sensitive skin condition, but like atopic dermatitis, everyone's triggers differ. And so any topical product, any new skincare product or active ingredient has the potential to precipitate a flare of the rosacea, whether it be redness or papules and pustules, the symptoms of stinging, burning, sensitivity, all of those uncomfortable things that people who have rosacea deal with. It's the same story though with rosacea and retinol and retinaldehyde as it was with atopic dermatitis and retinol or retinaldehyde, and that is really where the issue arises is in the beginning stages when you're first introducing the product into your routine, when you may have some irritation. And again, that irritation is a lot less likely with cosmetic retinol and retinaldehyde in comparison to prescription strength tretinoin. You may not be aware of this if you have rosacea, but we've come to learn that an underlying issue in rosacea is partly a weakened skin barrier. And in theory, continued use of retinol or retinaldehyde, provided you tolerate it, may offer improvement in barrier function that ultimately could help in lessening symptom severity or symptom flares. Now, that's definitely not something that has been rigorously looked at in any type of clinical trial. And again, I want to emphasize retinol or retinaldehyde, these are cosmetic ingredients. They're not drugs, they're not treatments for either of these conditions. But if you have rosacea, don't operate under the assumption that retinol or retinaldehyde is completely off the table for you. As a side note, I have a whole video talking about how to use these ingredients if you have really sensitive skin. I give a lot more tips in that video in terms of how to introduce the ingredient into your routine, tips around skincare to minimize side effects. So definitely check that video out. Then the last myth around starting retinol or retinaldehyde, the percentage of retinol or retinaldehyde is really, really important. And again, I want to emphasize that when it comes to these cosmetic ingredients, a lot of it boils down to the formulation overall. Some formulations may have certain vehicles and techniques and technologies in terms of how the retinol is delivered to the skin to enhance penetration, to improve stability, and therefore a lower percentage might actually be stronger in one product in comparison to a higher percentage retinol in another product. So don't just fall for the percentage. And here's the truth, whether it be retinol or retinaldehyde, in many cases, the manufacturer is not even going to disclose to you what the percentage of the actual ingredient is. So you don't know how much you're getting in the first place. And along the same vein, I think a lot of consumers can be duped, if you will, into thinking that a product is likely going to be effective for them when a brand does disclose the percentage of retinol or retinaldehyde in their product. But I want you to remember that it's still the same set of issues. The efficacy is going to boil down to the formulation of that product overall and how it performs in comparison to another retinol or retinaldehyde with similar percentage or different percentage. It could be night or day. Here we are, and you've decided you're gonna go with a cosmetic form of vitamin A, whether it be retinol or retinaldehyde. You've decided that you don't want to go to a derm and have the prescription Tretinoin. And so you want to choose retinol or retinaldehyde. Which one should you choose? And I want to make it clear, we're talking about improving the signs of skin aging here. We're not talking about treating a skin disease like acne or melasma. We're just talking about, for cosmetic purposes. What cosmetic ingredient should you choose? It boils down to, you and what products sound of interest to you and are within your budget. You try them out, you see how you like them, and you see, importantly, is this something that I want to continue using? Getting results from any of these ingredients, whether it be the prescription stuff or the stuff that you buy over the counter, you have to use them consistently. You have to be patient with them. They take time to work, at least 4 to 6 weeks to begin seeing visible signs of change, and it could take even longer. And set your expectations from the get-go. This isn't going to completely erase sun damage. This isn't going to completely erase wrinkles. It can subtly improve them, but it's not going to completely erase them. In order to help with your expectations, take a photograph of yourself before starting, and then take another photograph maybe 4 weeks into using, and then maybe another 8 weeks into using, and then at 12 weeks. And if by the end of the 12 weeks you're not really seeing much improvement, maybe consider switching. Now, I have personally tried many retinols and many retinaldehyde products out there. One of my favorite retinols is the Neutrogena Rapid Wrinkle Repair Regenerating Cream, fragrance-free. I love the vehicle on that. It's very moisturizing. And I also know that Johnson & Johnson has put a lot of R&D into that formulation. I'm also a big fan of this CeraVe Regenerating Retinol Serum. That formula has niacinamide and licorice root, both of which can help with redness and hyperpigmentation, and they also help soothe the barrier, so they kind of address any potential issues around dryness and peeling that might occur. Those ingredients help support barrier function. So I like that product for those reasons. As a side note, YouTube has this shop feature now where if you click on the little shopping bag, you can see these products that I'm talking about. When it comes to retinaldehyde, I am a huge fan of Avène's Retrin AL. I've used that. It's a very good product. It is on the pricier side, but that company did put a lot of good R&D into that formulation, so I feel confident in that product. And then a less expensive retinaldehyde that I personally use that I really like is the Beauty of Joseon Retinol Eye Serum. It's marketed as an eye serum, but it also can be used to the face. So those are just some that I have recommended over the years that personally I have a lot of confidence in. But when it comes to my recommendations of those, it boils down to my experience using them, my experience recommending them, as well as my confidence in the company and the R&D that they do and what they put into their products and product formulation. But it's more of an opinion as opposed to a fact, meaning there aren't any studies out there that compare my recommendations to any other product out there on the market and do, a real rigorous head-to-head blind comparison. So all that to say, if you're already using either of these ingredients, you're seeing good results, don't feel like you need to buy something new. Honestly, if you find that a product is working for you, there's really no reason to change. Now, we talked in this video about a lot of the unknowns around retinol and retinaldehyde and how that differs in comparison to prescription tretinoin, which is a medication, so it's held to a higher standard for demonstrating safety and efficacy. It's actually FDA approved for the treatment of photoaging, if you will. But you may be wondering, well, hey, there is another retinoid on the street that we actually can buy now without a prescription, adapalene, an FDA approved retinoid for not aging, but rather acne. And you may ask yourself, well, can it work for aging? On the end slate is a video addressing this topic, so watch that one next. But if you all enjoyed this one, give it a thumbs up, share it with your friends, and as always, don't forget, sunscreen and subscribe. I'll talk to you guys tomorrow. Bye.